Hey guys, it's Chandler, and welcome to the Healing Heroes.
I promise you.
I'm Chandler Stroud, an executive, wife, and busy mom of two, who after years of living with anxiety, health struggles, and an unshakable feeling like I should be happier, made a profound discovery that changed everything. Join me on a journey where unexpected paths lead to healing and more happiness. On this show, we'll explore unconventional ways to unlock more joy in your own life with the help of my very own healers and trusted advisors, the Healing Heroes. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Healing Heroes podcast. I'm your host, Chandler, and today I'm back with hero and acupuncturist Jacques Depardieu, someone who has done so much to further my healing journey, and whom today I feel lucky enough to call my friend. He and I always have so much fun together, and we always have these great, deep, and interesting conversations that sometimes go into realms I don't fully comprehend. But what I love about my discussions with Jacques is that even though I might not fully understand his teachings in the moment, I frequently find myself having these aha moments, weeks or even months later, where I think, that's what Jacques was trying to explain. While perhaps I had a general sense of the wisdom he was imparting at the time, it can sometimes feel way over my head until something happens in real life that just makes it click into place. And I suddenly have this sense that he's further ahead than all of us, just way ahead of the game. Knowing this and having experienced it on multiple occasions, I decided that selfishly, I'd love to learn something from him today that I know very little about relating to how we experience life. I found myself wondering and often discussing with Jacques, how can I experience more joy just given the demands on my time and everything I feel like needs to get done today? And so, in this conversation, I'm going to ask him to expound on that topic and explain what qi is for me and all of you listening. At the highest level, I know it to be a central concept in traditional Chinese philosophy and medicine, often translated as life force or energy flow, essentially the vital energy that flows through all living things, connecting mind, body, and spirit. That's more of the textbook definition, but if I've learned anything from Jacques in our many deep conversations together, it often runs much deeper than what we know is true on the surface. And so I'm really excited to dive in and get his experienced perspective on all of this. Before we jump into our conversation today, let me give a quick refresher on Jacques' background. Jacques Depardieu is nationally board certified in acupuncture and traditional Chinese pharmacology and has been practicing for over 25 years. He has a master's in Oriental medicine and has been a Qigong practitioner and teacher for over 30 years. He's a self-described advocate of the human spirit, having treated thousands of individuals for a wide array of conditions. He understands the role spirit, creativity, and spontaneity play in creating health and recovery. Jacques, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, and I love it. And I am your friend. We're friends, but goes without saying.
No.
Absolutely. And yeah, I appreciate what you shared. And I think that goes for anyone as far as like there are certain times that in our lives, something that we've read or heard comes to us and we reinterpret it in a new meaningful way. You know, so you're saying in our conversations, I wouldn't say that they're necessarily, I don't think anything is over your head. That's an interesting, that in and of itself, I'm not going to distract. But what we all of us innately know and have all the wisdom required to live a joyful, meaningful life. But unfortunately, given our circumstances, our systems, our particular education system, our particular background and how we grew up, often those things distract us from realizing, knowing, and then having been supported that we already hold that knowledge. And that really is when you describe chi, you read it definitionally, and that's an important place to start. The intellect itself, which has developed over time, receives those words, which is miraculous. You've read those, right? Somebody wrote that, you read it, and I can understand what you just said, and then I interpret it, and then I interpret it in a way that I can understand given my education background, my idea of what you said, my personal inclinations to what those things meant to me, right? But no plant, no cat, the tree needs to know what that means, okay? They might know. I haven't had too many chats with them, but, I've had some pretty cool chats with all of them, actually. So
I believe that.
Yeah. But that chat is non-linguistic, and it's more of a love, and it's more of a joy. Chi, as an idea, right, is this life force energy that animates all living, anything that's alive. But the chi itself is life itself. So it's not something we have, it's something that we are. We are chi. It's not like, oh, I'm going to go get some chi. I'm going to go get some more chi because I lost some chi, so now I need some more chi, right? So that gets complex because in our body, right, we need the air we breathe, the food we eat. Our organs have to be alive to transform that into life. We have blood within our body. So in physical reality, there are requirements for us to sustain being alive. And it's hard for us because as soon as I say us, I think of me. But if I, quote unquote, die, whatever that means, physically, my cells are still alive and functioning. I don't know how long, for, a week or two or something like that. They're still alive. They're just dying off because what nurtures and nourishes them, they're going to run out of. And then we turn into more kind of energy, and then that energy goes into the earth, if that's how we go or whatever. But we don't like that kind of frame of reference because, we have this idea of, my life and not life. And I know the other podcasts that you do touch on this kind of idea that we're not just this physical thing, that we're not like this thing inside this casing that, when the casing goes, we're not here anymore, right? Because, my experience is that we're more non-physical than physical. That's my understanding. It's my experience. So chi is really this vast understanding that everything is interwoven, everything is interconnected, all life is communicative, all life is regenerative.
Can you really have been such a grounding force in my healing journey, and I know we did this in the first episode, but for listeners who maybe aren't as familiar with your work yet, can you share a little bit about your background and what drew you to East Asian medicine and acupuncture specifically?
I have always been interested in what is behind religion, what is behind science, what's behind philosophy. I've always been one of those individuals that was happy and always wanted to have fun. I always want to have fun. I still do. So I always wanted to have fun and be happy and kind of just live my life. And the education process itself is something which there are things that I really liked. I actually was into math for a while, but I really got into, I went to this Jesuit high school. I really got into like a lot of the philosophies that the Jesuits exposed us to, which was like literally we were reading French existentialism. We were reading about like atheism, right? So that's kind of cool. It's kind of like we're always living these parallel realities where what we're interested in and we're desirous of sometimes doesn't exactly work for what is required of us in our education process. So as I did that, I made my way through the education process, and at the same time, I was teaching sailing all through high school and college. And instead of doing this PhD program for 10 years, I decided that I want to take a break and go sailing. So I got my 100-ton license and I was running charter boats. And an injury that I sustained where I was really, told I was going to require surgery, etc., led me to getting acupuncture. When I got acupuncture, everything clicked. And because I not only physically felt better, but my mental and emotional state changed. And from my background of studies, I said, there's no way how could that be? And so then I went to study we did this on another podcast. We talked about this. I went to study in China. Now I'm here today, sitting here. But simply put, we all have gifts and we all share them and use them every day in everything we do. It doesn't matter whether you work in an office, you're a bus driver, you're a teacher, you work in finance, you're assisting other people in their lives, and we're all cooperating. So it really is coming to realize that we're choosing what we do every day, that we're choosing how we want to experience our lives every day, and that if we do have some kind of focus or desire if we can take our attention and intention and focus it in that way, for instance, being happy or joyful, then we can actually achieve that. But to do that, we have to deconstruct a lot of the beliefs we have about ourselves, about how we got to where we got to, about what's happened to us in the past, about present relationships. And that's really where the work begins. And that's basically what I do at work every day, is see the effects of people's lives on their physical, mental, and emotional well-being, and try to help them realize that their miraculous abilities are always with them, and it's actually who they are more than anything else, and activating the awareness of those miraculous abilities puts them into play, and then our consciousness will gradually shift to understand that, and then we'll embody it, we'll experience it, I think that's what you've been doing, Chandler.
I mean, that was beautifully said, and I hope that's what I've been doing. It certainly feels like I'm well on my way, though, as I always say, healing isn't really a destination, it's a process. So I think I'll be doing it forever, but it's always so much fun when I feel like I've reached a new height of happiness or awareness in my life of how I'm showing up and the choices I am making, to your point. And I love that you mentioned that happiness and joy can be a choice. And I think it's something that so many want, but feels so, I don't want to say out of reach, because I do think you can be happy or joyful, but just have this sense that there's a way to go deeper. I mean, that was true for me, right? Like, I was a happy person. People would have described me as a happy person. I just knew, like, this inner knowing kind of signaled to me that there was more, that there was a new kind of joy that I was missing out on. Mm-hmm. And that's what the journey gave me, is the awareness to really experience that. So how would you suggest women, like, what's the first step? How do women start shifting or making choices that get them closer to that kind of awareness and joy?
The question really is, can we be grateful? Can we see everything that's good in our lives right now? Even in difficult situations, can we find some gratitude? Can we be thankful? Because first of all, we're alive, and we have the ability to continue that life, and we have the ability to change things in our life. But when we are experiencing our lives emotionally in the moment, we take it for granted that everything around us, everything in our lives is just something that that's happening, and we focus on not like all the miraculous things about our lives, that we have electricity, that we have running water, that we have shelter. Now, we're in a time where that's, unfortunately, on a daily basis, we see those who have a lot worse than that going on. And that's very difficult for us. But also what's really difficult is we've been taught consistently to focus on those things, to constantly focus on our problems, to constantly focus on what we dislike. And that kind of creates a certain type of personality. We all have these personalities where we just want something, and we can't get to that something because we have all these other somethings that we have to do. That's just simple. If we're in a relationship, if we have a family, now we're responsible for their joy, for their well-being. And actually, I'm not happy trying to make them happy. So it's like we got to kind of clear away a lot of that. Most of these types of meditations, yoga, qigong, they're ways for us to become aware of an aspect of our consciousness that can choose how we want to experience the moment. And then we can direct that in a way that we personally would like, which is like, I need to spend more time with my daughter because we're constantly fighting. So how can I work through that? Like, I'm going to stop. I'm going to see like what it is about me that like having so much difficulty with this. And then I'm going to try and find out what she's trying to share with me. It has nothing to do with like the specifics or the content. It's what's behind that, right? Or like, work is killing me and I can't do this forever. And there's no way that I'll be able to do this. But now we have all of these things because I have to pay my mortgage, and then now my son, is going to need to go to a special school or whatever. It's like there are these situations that are created by our beliefs that put us in unsustainable checkmate situation. And that leads to mental, physical, and emotional, problems. Now, if you turn that around and start to really be like, okay, I can stop everything in my life and everything will still be okay. Some people, you get the flu, you're in bed for 5 days, you're not, running around grocery shopping. How did you get through that? Right? So it's like we have to start to see like there are ways that we can change our lives in the moment, every moment, by seeing what's good, by like realizing that the world is not going to end if I don't get that delivered, if that doesn't get finished. And then we can start to see that we have these little ways of moving forward where we can set small goals, set ourselves in a direction. I think a goal is to just see that we're creating a lot of our emotionality based on beliefs we have. And if we want to change the way we're experiencing our life, we have to change the beliefs that are behind that. And then akin to that, and that's the acupuncture thing, is then with acupuncture, you get to experience that. Because a person comes in and is like, listen, I only have 45 minutes because I got and then it's like, okay, that's cool. And they're like, and, can I read or listen to something while I'm laying here? Because like, there's no way I'm going to lay here for like, 40 minutes. I'm like, well, give it a shot, Then boom, I go in there. They're like, can I have another 10 minutes? And then afterwards, I'm like, okay, what I'd like you to do is think about everything you were thinking about before you came in. And they try and they're like, it's not having any effect on me. That's right. What changed? You are more in your physical body than in your mind. Your mind is not who you are. It's part of the blessed experience in this life, but there's so much more. And when we can experience that and operate from that place, then you go outside, and I know you've probably had that experience. I've had it. You go outside, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, that you're dealing with like the grocery store, the pickup of the kid, the fact that the homework was late, but you're not irritated by it because you're just like, well, I'm just going to go get that, and I'm actually enjoying myself in the store. And like everything changed. What changed? Nothing changed except the way that you're experiencing it and the way you're perceiving it changed. That's what creates our realities.
Well, I love that. That's absolutely been my experience getting acupuncture with you, is that it does shift how I approach everything on the other side of that appointment and the mindset that I bring to it. But I do think, we've talked about energy on the show before and how to kind of control your energy or cultivate the kind of energy that you want to bring to those situations, to your point. How does chi play a role in that? Like, how is chi different from the Western definition of energy? And can you just explain it a little bit more? Because I feel like there's a connective tissue here to what we were talking about at the beginning and what you're suggesting acupuncture can help or assist women to do.
When we are in a certain mindset and that energy, right, where we feel like, we're just fighting fatigue or we're just distracted, and, we meet somebody and it's just hard for us to even tolerate 5 minutes of being with them. And, people might say, oh my God, that person's energy is like, oh, I love her energy, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Then we talk about chi. Now, if we could speak and communicate and understand the Chinese language, then we would see that there's a commonality there. Okay? However, the commonality lies in emotionality. What you're really describing is how you're experiencing your life emotionally, and then you're using your language to describe a feeling you're getting, which is really a telepathic feeling. That's telepathy, okay? Of picking up, like, which we do every day, of picking up like how we feel in a space, how we feel with someone else, how we feel listening to music. It's all about how we feel. It's not about how we think, but how we think affects how we feel, for sure. How we feel affects how we think. But really, it's like, that's what, women are all, we've had this conversation before, but I'll just reiterate a little bit of it. Women are telepathic. They feel their children's pain. They feel their neighbors. Like, they sense things. This is natural. Males also have these abilities, but often they'll be less inclined to use those attributes. And in the past, they were required, more because people lived in more with agriculture, with working in nature, with nature. But we've become very industrialized, and machines don't really require that type of emotional understanding because they're machines. It's like you just kind of watch and you see what people do and what they're attracted to. So the idea of chi, the idea of energy, is really translated into how do I feel about whatever it is. the food, my friend. So you could say like rotten food has bad chi. Yeah. Like, and a bouquet of flowers that's wilted has no chi, and a freshly cut bouquet has a lot of chi. And then you call that shen, right? So a little kid that's smiling, you see so much shen, so much chi. And somebody who's unfortunately very ill and elderly, where their eyes almost aren't focusing, there's like no chi. That's what they mean when they say that. It doesn't mean that that person doesn't have life force energy. It means that that kind of animated spirit is not being projected or communicated in the same way, right? We've all seen, like, you see a little kid that's depressed. It's like the worst thing you can ever see. You look in their eyes and that spark is gone. It like breaks my heart, right? And you know that with your friends, you look at them right off the bat, you're like, boom. Right? And you're like, how you doing? They're like, oh, great. And you're like, yeah, right? It's so easy. Everyone knows, everybody uses chi, communicates with chi. Everybody knows energy, communicates with energy every single day. They may not be aware of it, but like, hopefully this conversation makes you realize that you do it all the time. Even when you pull a vegetable out of the, refrigerator, you look at the vegetables chi and you're like, Matt, that's going to the compost. Because that's the life force, right? You can see, somebody puts a plate of, you smell it, puts a plate at the restaurant in front of you of fish, and you're like, I'm not going to eat that. It's not fresh, Mm-hmm. That's energy, that's chi.
So what is we read the textbook definition in the intro. How do you describe chi if you were teaching it to someone unfamiliar with it?
I would try and assist people to understand that the ability for you to sit here and understand what I just communicated to you and then translate that into something that's meaningful to you is all occurring by the blessed, miraculous abilities that you are. And the intellect that you just translated with is only a small portion. Chi doesn't belong to us. We belong to chi. That's really important. Okay? We belong to chi. Because the idea of like me speaking, like I'm not around if my body's not here. Maybe, I don't know, but not in the way that I am right now. Okay? Chi is experiential. It's my definition of acupuncture. Acupuncture assists you to become more aware of your chi and your energy, which is who you are. And that consciousness itself generally doesn't use language. It uses a sense of well-being. It uses a sense of purpose. It has a sense of natural integrity. When we fully experience it, we generally tend to not do things to harm others or ourselves. Because when we operate from love and care, which is what nature naturally does, we will not then operate with this type of intentionality. My understanding is generally when we're in conflict with ourselves, with our beliefs, and we hold one type of emotion for too long, then that will physically manifest as an illness. It'll mentally manifest as thoughts and that will unfortunately drive us to perhaps doing things which, our heart, is against. And emotionally, we experience suffering. So, it's really about like when we're joyful, when we're loving, when we feel connected, like none of those things generally happen to people. They're generally healthy. Their days are good. Their relationships are good, It's a lot of work right now, though. Not everybody's on the bandwagon for this, but thank goodness that you're doing these to help people realize that they can make that choice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point. I think it's such a hard thing, too, because, I always knew there was something awry, like as I said in the first episode as well. I always knew there was more meaning. There was something else out there in terms of how I was experiencing life. And I feel so lucky that I had this sense, this pull that I couldn't explain, to peel back the onion and see if I was right, that there was something more for me. But I fear so many women today aren't attuned necessarily to that pull and don't realize that there is so much more beyond what they've defined as joy in their lives. And I think, to what you were saying, I mean, that was the whole impetus and aha of the show, was that what I was keeping inside, not feeling, the beliefs and stories I was telling myself, were creating conflict in my body and showing up in physical illness and form. And I think what was so revolutionary and transformative for me, that I'm trying to help other women understand, is that a lot of those narratives are subconscious. Often we hold beliefs about ourselves that we are not aware of. I talk all the time about, I was this confident executive running a team with this dream job. I mean, no one would point at me and say she really hates herself deep down. But like, honestly, months into EMDR and a lot of the other practices, acupuncture, that helped me become more present, made me aware of those narratives. And it really has been the most transformative aspect of the journey, is to just understand, where did these beliefs come from and how can I change them? And I think that's really been the unlock for me in experiencing a lot of what you're talking about, which is just being aware and present and choosing how you want to show up every day, choosing what you give your time and attention to, and being intentional about how you interact with those things versus being reactive or believing that, being 10 minutes late to a soccer game is the end of the world, right? And it was really a good shift for me. So, I think what you said really resonates.
It's beautiful. And that's your story. And your story you can communicate the experiences and the awareness. Your personal awareness has led you to a much vaster understanding of life and how you personally want to live it. And I do believe, and we know this, we all have friends. They all have different things that they're desirous of that brings them joy. And this is not about doing one thing in one way so you get to where we're at, or I get to where you're at and you get to where I'm at. It's about helping people get to where they would like to be with their lives in their way that's meaningful to them. That's what I'm all about. And that, I think, is what you just shared. And it's for those who are interested. And that's fine, because, it's like everybody's into different stuff. But but I do believe that for those who are interested, who are listening, that they have the right to a joyful life, and that they can make choices every day, small and big, to make steps towards that choice. And that the subconscious that you just spoke about is actually really not so subconscious. It's something that we can become conscious of if we start to focus on what are the thoughts and feelings we're having about ourselves and about the people around us every day, because those are actually being created by us. They're not truths with a capital T. There are interpretations of the way we feel about things. And if we can find out why we're feeling about it, we might find that we have these beliefs. Like, I really don't like to be late because I feel it's disrespectful to others. And I just can't understand people who show up an hour late without the thing that I asked them to bring. And they don't seem to give up. And you're like, what the? And then you're just like, okay, so I have to be authentic to myself. We all cooperate here. And it's all about, like you were just describing, work and the team and everything. It's all about like how we navigate in our lives from one thing to the next that leads us. Like for someone else who's basically been, in an ashram, meditating and doing whatever, growing vegetables, like all of a sudden they're like, I need to have a corporate job. And then they go get a corporate job, right? And the other person's in a corporate job for 10 years. They're like, I need to freaking go to an ashram. Like, because like, that's their path. That's their life. So I meet everybody. Every day I meet people who come in on their path. I try to understand it, and I try to support them to become aware that they're on this path and that it's a good path if they want to see it that way, and that they can choose to experience it in a more meaningful, joyful way if they're inclined. And I don't have to tell them all this kind of stuff or philosophies. I just like yesterday, hey, what do you like to do? And she's like, well, my husband likes this and I don't really like that. And I'm like, what do you like to do? She's like, I don't really know. Like, and then I was like, well, come on. She's like, well, I've always wanted to learn how to paint. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. So then just take some painting classes. And then she was like big smile. She's like, oh, my friend's doing that, but like I was like, come on, you're going to join, She's like, yeah, okay. Now hundreds of patients, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds actually over the years have been thanked me so much. They're like, guess what? I can play the guitar now. Guess what? I learned how to roller skate. Guess what? I went and now I can do the climbing gym, go and do something. And then they learn. It's like you're a kid again. That's the whole idea, is like, we're kids right now. Like, where did life become so serious? Where did everything have to be? And Chandler, since, I know Chandler, so her children now and my children are a little bit older, but it's like everything is so serious. Oh, like soccer, like your SATs, like your whole life is dependent upon, and the kids are like, yes, versus like, don't worry about it, you're fine, So that's not cool for them though, because you want to know why there are so many children who have all these mood disorders and everything. Just imagine you growing up at their age with devices that did nothing but let you know that the world is basically on the brink of destruction and annihilation, that like every sport you play, everything you do is so meaningful for your future, on and on and on. And that the kid who's better than you at it is like going to go to the school that's better, like, how do you handle that? And that's what they're dealing with, Or they just put themselves in a thing like, that's not my life, I'll never have that. Like, well, guess what? That's going to happen to them then. Sad, right?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think the same types of beliefs are inherited no matter what generation. I think about all of the beliefs that I've had to strip back about people pleasing to be liked and earning my worth through achievement and productivity. And that is essentially what we are passing on to our kids in many ways by saying, this is very serious. You've got to play really well to get into the best school. And I don't think any parent consciously, says, well, most that I know and am friends with don't drill that into their kid. It's sort of the cultural understanding, right? Even when I scold my kids and tell them, this is really bad behavior or you're not doing this the right way, I'm so conscious of making sure they understand that they are loved no matter what. And I say to them all the time, just so you know, I don't like what you did here, but I still love you just as much. You do not have to be good to earn my love. I love you when you're bad. I love you when you're good. I love you no matter what, but I am allowed to be annoyed, frustrated, or disappointed in decisions you make that create these behaviors. And because I see it in their face, it's like kids just internalize that kind of, being reprimanded or being told, like, do better as just they need to be doing something to earn praise or earn worth. And I guess it just triggers me because I feel like I'm more aware of the many times I felt like that as a kid.
In our childhoods, if we're blessed enough to be in a family that gives us love and shares that love, but also teaches us that, like, don't put your hand on the stove, it'll burn, okay? Do you keep your children at an early age out of harm's way? Given their age, given their circumstances, it's us supporting them to be, if we're blessed enough to be able to create or to find environments where they can grow and thrive with those abilities.
Do you think that's what's happening with women today? Just kind of going back to what we were talking about, trying to find their joy living in a world where there's endless to-do lists. Do you think women are trying to, I don't want to say prove themselves, but like be so concerned about all the other players in their lives, like be the best mom, the best wife, the best coworker, like you were talking about, kids being true to themselves and their parents and their teachers. Do you think women in particular just have so many roles to play that focusing on what's right for them is just getting lost in the shuffle?
I believe that all humans right now are highly aware of how much suffering there is happening and how much difficulty there is, even if our lives are materially wonderful. And I believe that women are more aware of and operate more from that sense of when things, like when things aren't going well for your friends' children, when you see, communities struggling, you're affected by it. It affects the way you're experiencing it. And it can, unfortunately, be so difficult that it's hard for you to perform all these tasks because you're so overwhelmed by this sense of, what your child is going through, what your sister's going through, what your neighbor's going through. And I really believe that that's where the work begins, because there's this natural inclination for men and women, but I believe women are more in tune with it, to care, to love, to support. And when you feel that you can't do that, or you're being stopped from doing that, or you can barely even do that for yourself and your family, that's like where all of a sudden those negative belief frameworks come in, right? So it's really about realizing for ourselves and for our families and for the community, there's a lot more good happening right now than bad. The world actually is doing really well. People, look at the world we're living in. There's food in the stores. There are schools. People are communicating. We're seeing people are focusing on a lot of what's in conflict, but they're not focusing on how much good there is. So look at the good in your day. Look at the good in your community. Look at the good in your home. And start to feel that, and then start to share that. And continuously, when somebody brings something up that's negative, try and help them see it, or reframe that there's a way that they can see good, that they it's changing that for ourselves. It's sharing different things of how we can see that conflict and adversity can lead us to like a better world, because when you start to tell somebody that, you start to feel it inside, and then it'll become your belief. And once it's your belief, you'll start operating from that place. And there are people like that, right?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Well, This has been a great conversation. I know we're at time, but just one last question for listeners. If there was one piece of advice or parting wisdom that you would share with our listeners in terms of what you hope they take away from today's conversation, what would it be?
Much of the conversation we've had today is about ways to communicate what we call these ideas of chi or energy. And we really got into how they apply to us individually and as humans. And really, we tried to connect that to this idea of joy. But joy is something that's experienced and it's personal. And it's really comes when we feel alive, and the love of being alive, and the love for just the senses that we have. And when we're in love, everything turns on that way, right? And Chandler, you started, before we started recording, you described your experience of walking outside today, where we are in the Northeast today. It's a beautiful day. The weather's been tough. We have this miraculous, beautiful day with clear skies and a fresh breeze, and like everything is so lush because it's been raining and the birds are chirping. That's it. That's what it's about. It's like becoming aware that we are absolutely connected to, and we can experience this joy of being alive. And it's like that type of love that we participate in. When we experience it, it can be so spiritual that we feel love for everything around us, that we can just have this sense of like, my goodness. Now, people have these kinds of spiritual experiences where they have to go and, they take some type of hallucinogen, or they do these types of things. But it's look at a kid. They do that every day. That's what they feel. They're just alive, and they love, and they're giddy if they put their hands in the water, or they chasing a little duck around on the grass or whatever. It's like, we can do that too. We can just do that when we look out the window, when we're at the store. It's like an awakening, basically. It's an awakening, like chi and energy and all these things are just different ways that we can awaken to the joy within us, and to feel our connection to everything that's around us.
Well said. Thank you so much, Jacques, for the time today. I had so much fun with you as always. I never know where our conversations are going to go, but this was a good one. Thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate it. It'll be interesting to listen to, because I think so much of what we shared when we're talking is what's behind our words. And if we could just someday be able to create these communications that don't have words but are just telepathically communicated through feelings, then we would really start to begin to understand what's really happening when we're interacting with ourselves and with each other.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Jacques.
All right.
Once again, for being here. This was fun.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please share it with friends, and remember to follow the show. You can also visit healingheroespodcast.com to get resources, meet the heroes, and share your ideas for future episodes. Thanks for listening, everyone. And until next time, remember, be curious, be courageous, and be kind to yourself. You've got this.